Hello, Judith.
Hello, Ruth.
Thank you very much for agreeing to this conversation.
You're so welcome. It's lovely to see you.
Maybe you start just how you got into contact with the Alexander technique and what were the circumstances and so on.
Lovely. Good questions. Originally, I trained as a musician at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. And in the first year, we were all introduced to Alexander by the very wonderful Elizabeth Waterhouse. And I really liked it. I thought, oh, this is lovely. I did some dancing and I enjoyed yoga and various movement practices. So I thought, oh, lovely, this will be interesting. And then at the end of the year, I was in a very big car accident. And suddenly I was in a lot of trouble. And so then the work became much more relevant to me. And I think what really was interesting for me, that it wasn't just in terms of pain, but it was also in terms of sustaining energy and also dealing with anxiety, particularly in performance. So after the accident, I found that it really helped me help me deal with pain, but also with sustaining energy and with my emotional state, not just in performance, which was, I had a lot of performance anxiety then, but also in everyday life. So I feel really fortunate because I was in my early 20s and my end of my teens, I was introduced to the work. And then I could see over and over how it was going to be more relevant, and very fortunate to come across wonderful teachers and meet other musicians who introduced me to other teachers. And got more and more interested in it, and sort of in my mid-20s decided to train. I was really lucky. I got a job in an orchestra at English National Opera where I could train and also work.
Oh, nice.
And
so how did that decision come about?
Well, I think it really was, like many people, I think, when you find that something's helping you so much, you really want to share it. And then at the beginning of my training, I also met my lovely husband, Peter Buckoke, who was training with the Rebos, and I was training with Mr. Macdonald. And so that was really nice because we could come together quite a lot and talk about the different approaches, but they were from very similar backgrounds. And it was really nice. I found not only the sort of work of self-regulation, but the work, how it connects you to other people, and it opens up a whole new, I guess, a framework for thinking, a philosophy, as well as this beautiful practice that we work with, everyday practice and movement,
And after the training, how was the balance between teaching the Alexander technique and being a musician, working as a musician?
Yeah, great to think back to that, actually, because it was quite busy. And I was very lucky that almost as soon as I qualified, I started teaching. And so there was a balance, I suppose, at the beginning where I was doing more playing and some teaching. And then, of course, we had children and things changed and I didn't want to go away so much. So I was doing more teaching. And then very lucky, I was so fortunate that people started to ask me to work on training courses and run courses and write about the work. So it's sort of gradually they changed places, and I was doing much more teaching and being involved in the Alexander world. And gradually, I play, but my main life now is around the work.
Mm. And was that always the case, or were there different phases, I guess, where there was the family phase?
Yeah, that's nice, the family phase. There was the family phase. And then Peter, my husband, Peter Buckoke, got a job at the Royal College of Music with double bass teaching, but also he took over the Alexander department there. And so I also joined him, and he did this incredible thing, Ruth. He did some research, and it started to become part of the degree. And that has now built up to a massive element at the Royal College of Music, where everyone has Alexander lessons, and they can take electives to have it as part of their degree. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very big part of our lives, combining the work with music education. And we've made a big connection between the training course, where I'm co-head of training, between our training course and the Royal College of Music. So there's a lot of crossovers, students visiting the training and the training course people visiting the Royal College. So it's been a very nice part of my life, that particularly bringing it into the music world.
Yeah. Yeah, this is very special, being married to a Alexander teacher, having a family and working in similar places and having corporations. And
exactly.
And you also wrote a book together.
We wrote a book together, which has become very, well known in that it's a sort of a primary book, I think, for musicians, because we use it on our courses. And it's really nice that it's sort of round the world, people use it and get in touch with us really regularly, because it's quite a simple, clear approach to the work, I think. And then recently, I was asked to write another book, which was a wonderful thing to do, because it grew out of drawing. We were talking earlier about art, and so that's a sort of different sort of book, but also useful for students, I think.
It's beautiful. I saw it. Yes.
Thank you.
So how did you get into drawing in the first place?
Well, interesting, because I always doodled a bit. I'm not like an artist person. I just draw for fun and doodle a lot. And then during the pandemic, my son said, we can't see each other, so how about we just send each other a drawing every day? And so we did that, and it was on Instagram. I didn't really realize Instagram was quite such a thing. But anyway, we started doing that, and then people started following it, and then a publisher saw it and said, why don't you write a book? So it's called Finding Quiet Strength. And it's really worked out interestingly, because a lot of people find reading a lot of words about the work quite difficult, I think. But seeing a picture is sort of like, that means being grounded, or that means having your head in the air, or something. So it's worked out, particularly for people who are dyslexic or have learning difficulties. It's turned out to be a very useful resource.
Finding quiet strength is a wonderful slogan. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I think that little phrase has been so helpful to me because life gets quite noisy, doesn't it? We've got a lot of mental chatter and inner critic and worrying and, all sorts of ruminations. And I think coming to quiet in our minds, but also with our energy and in our relationships. And it's a phrase that's used a lot in the work, that before we anticipate a movement, we might come to quiet so that we can go into predicting movement in a gentler way with less recruitment of tension or anxiety. So I find it a very psychophysical phrase.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
You are a very active person and you have so many projects, and it's just doing a little research, a lot more than I even was aware of.
Oh.
So maybe you can talk about the education work, the developing self.
Yes. Well, the education work, I've been so lucky, I think, in the Alexander world to meet some really inspiring people. Obviously my husband, but also Sue Mary, who is very, very passionate. It's a word that's used a lot, but she is passionate about taking the work to younger children. And we met, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago or something, and started to notice we both had this real feeling that the work is so relevant in education because of the psychophysical nature. And so we got together and we started running conferences and sort of running courses really for Alexander teachers to find a language that's age appropriate but also a starter language that can develop. And then we started writing books together and making materials for the courses. And the thing that we're both very interested in is allowing the work to start from a simplicity. So we have this idea called the ready list. And the ready list is 4 words. I'm going to say them now.
Yes.
So stop, see, breathe, soft and tall. And those 4 words are really useful. Stop, obviously, is a way of coming to quiet, pausing. Seeing interacts with our sense of exteroception. Breathing, obviously, is interoception. And soft and tall is our proprioceptive sense alongside kinesthesia. And in a way, I think the simplicity of those words becomes really interesting, that we find in music, we think of it as a chord, a way to come into a chord of awareness that is this quiet, I sometimes call it the tonic state. So Sue and I have just been such good pals. She's an extraordinary person. And we found an energy together to find projects that would really enhance the work in education. And that's grown. We now have a big training program and books and materials, but we've also developed resources on the STAT website as well as having an interest group in the STAT world for people who work in education to come together.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So you work with very different audiences, let's say. You work with musicians, with children and young people, with Alexander students as well. So how did it happen that you work at LCATT as a trainer?
At LCATT, yes. Well, two more awesome folk that I co-headed training with, Rafia Sachs and Roger Kidd. And we started, I don't know, maybe 25 years ago. Rafia started the training course. She was head of training for a long time. And the three of us just get on. We're very, very different. But we really respect each other. And it just kind of clicked. We've qualified over 100 people now, I think. And our alumni are really awesome. They're teaching in lots of schools and colleges and running big programs. So we do feel that we've been so lucky to create that together. And I think the training course is flexible yet rigorous. So it's everyone can feel very welcome to come and visit us.
Wow. How did you manage all that? All these huge projects and running a school, and it's amazing.
It is amazing when you say it like that. But I mean, one's life is one's life. But the big message is, I think, of our work is that it is a quiet strength. We do find an energy and a direction with the work to be purposeful as well as peaceful. And I think that, it sounds like I'm working all the time, but we go on holiday and watch the television and have lovely times. But I think if you have the work within you, it really helps you to prioritize, actually, your choices. That's partly what it's about, isn't it? What am I thinking about? Where am I? What am I doing? These very simple but powerful questions.
Yeah. So you work with individuals and with groups, and that is obviously a very different way of working. What's the difference for you between working with individuals and working with groups?
What an interesting question. I think it's about basically the work for me is about finding a very safe, grounded energy with people. So I think that they feel valued and welcomed in the space, and whether that's an individual or a group, it doesn't really matter to me so much now. I think it's just a slightly different energy with a group that, one's, welcoming more people, I suppose. And I'm very interested in the balance within lessons or workshops, that we balance information, experience, but also experiment. And I think in a group setting, there's a little bit more perhaps experimenting and playfulness within a group dynamic. But even within an individual lesson, I think one wants to make sure that people make the work their own by playing around with ideas and movement and breath. So I don't know that I prefer one or the other, but I really like, I guess, to have repertoire in my life and that I'm not just doing one thing all the time. Because I think it kind of grows our approach to the work. And what I really love doing, as you can tell, is collaborating with other people.
Yeah.
I think that's so wonderful. I learn so much from everyone. That's the ideal, isn't it, when we're teaching, that we're remembering that it's always the yin and yang of learning and teaching.
Yeah. And the group work, well, you can't obviously put hands on everyone, so you play games and...
I try in most workshops to put a little bit of hands-on at some point to people, but also I often say to everyone in a workshop that the major skills that we're working on, how to think, how to move, how to breathe, and the skill of touch, even if I'm not putting touch on, I think now self-touch is very, very helpful, or touch just between two people respectfully working together. So I think touch for me is a very important element, especially that we contextualize it as an important human element. You know, that it doesn't have to be only therapeutic. It can be friendly and it can be educational.
Yeah. This is a wide range you're working in.
Well, the work is remarkable, isn't it? It's really a practical philosophy that we can apply in so many different ways, I guess.
What is the most important aspect of the work for you currently?
I think the most important aspect of the work is noticing that we're connecting, not correcting. That we are thinking about being curious and listening, and that we are doing that without assessing or judging, but really open to the noticing in almost like a sort of compare and contrast sort of way, a skillful way of noticing that is not telling ourselves off or telling anyone else off. And I think that helps us to be creative and have clarity. It helps us to be calm and confident. So those things growing out of this connecting, I mean, we might call it self-regulation. That helps us then to co-regulate in a really welcoming way. I suppose that's where I am with it at the minute. This, and that grows out of quietly connecting, I think.
And can you say what's the most important benefit for you, for yourself? Is that possible? I don't know.
That is such a lovely question. I think obviously there's a sense of, on my particular journey, letting go of pain has been very significant. But not just physical pain, I think. The pain of anxiety or the pain of feeling disconnected or disembodied, the sort of feeling that the work can give us, I think, of being present in a way that is actually really nourishing and positive. And then we can accept. We know that sometimes we don't feel like that. and that we can trust that we'll come back to it with our skills. They really are skills, and they're important.
Yeah. So the emotional side of things is also an important aspect. You've been touching on it with working with anxiety or the reactiveness to the stimuli of life and all that.
And it's easy to forget them, isn't it? Because we say, oh, the startle pattern, and we say it very sort of, oh, we're undoing the startle pattern. But it's so deep for many of us, this fear or defense and fixing and freezing. And I think also this fawn state that people know more about now, this kind of total lack of energy, which can link to depression. And I think that the work is often, it's not valued always in the sense of how powerful this psychophysical interactiveness is.
Yeah.
And I think, Alexander's understanding of that is equivalent to Freud's discoveries and Jung, this interactivity of the mind, body and emotion. It's just really, we're only at the edge of understanding it, even neuroscience. And there's many things out there now, like polyvagal theory or, all these wonderful things that are available that are actually even deepening our understanding of our work to us.
Yes. It's also explaining our work quite beautifully.
Beautifully. Really. And if we as a profession open not to feeling we have to protect something, but one of my passions, you could say, or really deep interest is connecting with other modalities to build this knowledge between us, because there's so much interplay between these different approaches and frameworks of thinking.
Is there anything you would like to talk about?
Well, I would like to mention that I also teach movement. I teach yoga and Tai Chi. But currently I'm doing a lot of teaching Dart work. And I think Dart work is really important in our world, and that I think it's got a lot to offer, the Alexander technique, as a sort of way of introducing movement, but also an understanding not just of human development, but childhood development. And these reflexes that Dart help us get back in touch with are so helpful and useful to understand why we might not be moving freely and easily. And I think that oftentimes Alexander's thought of a little bit statically. And of course there's a lot of power in that peaceful, quiet space. But I'm very, very lucky to have worked with a lot of Dart teachers over the years, and particularly with the Murrays, who are extraordinary people and helped Dart develop his work, and they really brought it into the Alexander world. And I think it's an important consideration for us that these people like Dart and Frank Pierce-Jones and John Dewey really, again, they opened up the work to these different areas, education, awareness, but sort of the development of movement. And I think once people start to understand developmental movement, it's very powerful and helpful, and even, deep respect to physiotherapy and all sorts of different modalities. But the practice of these developmental movements is very, very poignant and touching, but also very regulating and opening to a bigger repertoire and a bigger range of movement, I think. And so it's really, really something I'd love for us all to let the world know about more, I think.
And you teach that in workshops, or do you integrate it in your lessons, or both?
Both, yeah. And I'm, at the training course we have terms on different movement practices that are so deeply in harmony with Alexander work, like Tai Chi or yoga. But Dart is one that everybody just loves. So we regularly do that.
Okay. Can I ask you for a few very brief definitions? So, like, what is your current understanding of the Alexander technique in a nutshell?
My current understanding of the Alexander technique is it's a balance between self-regulation and co-regulation.
And can you define the principles of the Alexander technique, also with one or two sentences each? Let's start with directions.
The ready list is a great way of understanding the Alexander technique, that we have a stimulus and we can choose our response to it rather than just our reaction pattern, and that most of us need a little help with that and to find our sort of deep, authentic choice in life rather than just our habit patterns from childhood or habit patterns from school, but really our deep choice to be who we want to be. And I would say stop, is coming to quiet and being in the present, being in time, sensing space and ease, help us to find, when we can, our calm, confident, coordinated energy.
So you included already the definition of inhibition?
Yes, I think inhibition is the framework for choice. It's part of inhibition's job is to show us the habit, and part of inhibition's job is to let us choose which road to take.
And what is primary control for you?
I sometimes call it primary freedom. I think it's a key to understanding wholeness and the interrelationship. We sometimes call it opposition and direction, don't we? Between the elements of the body, the primary freedom, the centered energy, and this grounded energy. It's a key for us to find volume and articulation in a free, suspended way in gravity. Crikey.
Wow. And unreliable or faulty sensory awareness?
That, I think, is our sense of humour clause that we all need, self of self-respect that is inclusive of remembering we all get fake news, we all misunderstand things, we all make mistakes, we all think that's a paper bag and it turns out to be a dog. I mean, it goes on and on. We all just need to let go of being right.
Very nice. I love that. Have I forgotten something?
That was pretty awesome questions.
So yeah, maybe we can finish here.
Oh, thank you, Ruth.
Thank you so much, Judith.
It's
really a pleasure talking to you.
Well, I'm glad to have the sort of a little bit of to balance the yin and yang of the feminine and the masculine. I think most of my teachers were women, apart from Mr. Macdonald, obviously, but I do think we bring a strength to the work of kindness, and that's important.
It is, definitely. That should be brought forward even more.
Yeah, definitely.